what I was thinking when I took the picture.
Yes, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, we've selected, they've been great questions, and we won't have time to get through all of them, but we'll see what we can do. And I'm going to, some of them are directed at individual people, most of them aren't. And so I'll just throw it open and people can answer for each one. This one, the first one we'll start with, I think it's an interesting one. It says, from Anne, if you could give us all a one-word piece of advice for our own science storytelling, what would it be? And P.S., thanks for showing us how sexy science is. I don't think that referred to your shirt, but it's okay. That we can probably do. One word, I guess we can go across, or if you want. You don't have to be everyone. Anyone want to give a one-word piece of advice? Yes, go ahead.
Algebra. Learn algebra.
Ooh.
I got one word.
Yep.
I got one word. That one word is ambition. That is something not encoded by any practicing exam in the school system. Yet, in fact, if you look at the most successful people there ever were, they are not the ones necessarily who got straight A's. Those are the ones who had ambition, which overrides it all.
Yeah, okay. I agree. It's a long word, but it's a good one. I would say passion. I think, in the terms of storytelling, too many people, we said this last night too, too many people, I think, are afraid to inject their own story or their own passion when they're talking about it as science. But if you don't talk about what you're interested in, no one else is going to be interested in it.
Empathize.
What?
Empathize, because the best people, the best teachers of science and the best writers about science are the ones who can empathize with people who don't quite get it yet.
I was going to say the same thing.
Anyone else want to throw anything? You've been jumping ahead? No?
I would just say,
Richard, yeah.
What?
I was going to say emphasizing exactly for the same reason, but I'll say instead poetry then.
Poetry. Excellent. Excellent. Anyone? Don't have
I would
to.
just say that you should be able to tell it so that your mother can understand it.
Hey, that's good. My mother never listens, but it's okay.
And if your mother's a theoretical physicist?
yeah, that's right. That's right.
She should tell you then.
All right, fine.
Okay, here's one that's actually a little bit related to what Neil was just talking about, but I think we can expand on it. Anita says, I've always wanted to be an astronautical engineer, but I am horrible at math, but I've got lots of passion. Can this dream ever be a reality, and where do I start? So it's an interesting, I guess I'll start with that. I mean, I think, as Bill said, math is the language of science, and I think you have to be able to be adept at it.
Math is the language of the universe.
Yes, you're right. I agree with you.
Brian?
I agree, but let me just finish, and then we can. Too many people think that you have to be a mathematical wizard to be even a physicist. I mean, much less an engineer. It takes all types. I know people who've won the Nobel Prize. I know people. You don't have to be the best mathematician in your class. You don't have to be a whiz. It takes all types to do science, and that any stereotype just doesn't work. If you're interested, do it.
What's that have to do with you knowing Nobel laureates?
Who were not the best in their class.
Oh, fine, thank you. Okay.
Who weren't necessarily even that strong in math.
Okay.
But the other thing, I'll just say, you say you're bad at math. I bet you're not that bad. And I just want to remind you that when it comes to math, there's no substitute for practice. It sucked for me. It sucks for, you just have to practice. So when you come to me and say, I'm bad at math, I am open-minded, of course, but skeptical. I'll bet you can do it, whoever you are.
That's an important point. We were talking about it last night, too, and it touches on what you said. I like science museums often because they show science as fun, but science is hard work, like anything, to do, like music, like anything else, to do it well. And it takes a lot of work. So And if you don't enjoy it, you can't do the work. But just enjoyment alone isn't enough. You've really got to be willing to work at it.
I think what's really going on here is people presume that in order to be good at, they presume that if the math is not coming easy, that therefore you'll never learn it. And I meant it literally, that math is the language of the universe, and it's like any other language, especially a language that does not share the Roman alphabet. So, for example, if you wanted to study Chinese, it looks completely intractable at first.
It looks like Greek.
Exactly. And you can ask the question, how long does it take one to become fluent in Chinese if you're not Chinese yourself? And so it can take years, 5 years, almost 10 years if you never go to China. You go to China maybe 5 years of intensive exposure, and you've never done that with math. Imagine that level of exposure to math, what kind of fluency you would have at the other end of that pipeline. So at least give yourself the opportunity that any person learning a foreign language would give themselves before you turn around and say you're not good at math.
Brian,
Get me started.
yeah, you don't want to get him started. I know that from experience. You're a professor of math as well as physics, probably the only one on the table.
Yeah, and the question that comes to mind for me is, how do you know that math is the language of the universe?
I was going to say, what about the multi?
The universe told me.
Pretty good first approximation, I'll tell you.
No,
Okay, we're now
Trinity,
doing
but
science
before
by
you go,
revelation.
Lawrence,
but-
before you go, I'm
yeah.
just wondering, because I have a question about this.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that one day far in the future we encounter some alien civilization and they say, hey, show us what you've done to understand the universe, and we bring out our math books with all our theorems in physics, and they turn around and say, math, we tried that. Yeah, it takes you just so far. And the real way to do it is like this.
I would say that whatever that real way is
Well,
not
it depends.
manifest to us at this moment. And until that day happens, where an alien tells us how backwards we are, all I can say is that the math that we did invent out of our human brain, as you surely know, Eugene Wigner said, the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in describing the universe, the fact that it works at all is sufficient enough for me.
But here I want to have a
You
note.
got it.
Just because you still can't figure out your string theory,
Back in your
don't come
corner.
to
Get
crying to
back
me.
Back in your
Don't come crying to me just because you can't figure it out.
No, in fact,
You got him started. See, you got him started.
Said don't get me started.
Get him started.
No, but I want to go on record.
He
as a-
warned you not to get him started.
Yeah, I know, I told you. But I want to go on record. And this is a momentous occasion. I want to go on record as agreeing with Brian.
Is anybody keeping the record?
But no, in the sense that it is fascinating if you're a theoretical physicist to wonder when you find something fascinating, whether some mathematical formalism fascinating, whether it's a property of our brains or whether it's a property of the universe. And we just don't know, I think, is the answer. If string
Right,
theory
but
looks
let me
great-
ask you a question. I find it slightly confusing because, Neil, you describe math as something that we create. So why is it the thing that we create is somehow intrinsic to the universe?
Isn't that
That's our
awesome?
description.
It's a
That's awesome.
remarkably surprising.
It
It
is
is
a
surprising.
description.
I don't lose sleep over that. I celebrate it.
It's a good thing. I celebrate it too.
Yeah, but
the
it is a
question,
question. There may be limitations
Yep.
in understanding the universe because of the way our brains work, and I think
That's surely the
and-
case. That's
yeah,
surely the
and for Republicans, it's already happened. But it's no, but seriously, that's an interesting question, and we really have to wonder about that. And if you're again working as some of us are at the forefront of physics, you wonder at some point when it's going to end.
It's some Republicans.
But to the questioner's question, I wouldn't worry about the possibility that mathematics is going to turn out to be ineffective in describing the universe, and use that as a reason to not keep practicing. And press on.
That's right. Okay, next question.
Could be an engineering perspective.
Yeah, no, there you go. Excellent. Next question from Joel. What do you believe or hope will be the most significant scientific advancement over the next few decades? And I know I have a pat answer to this, but I'll wait to see if anyone else has one. No?
We don't
Okay,
know
okay.
what the next most significant scientific discovery is going to be, for crying out loud.
Well, exactly. The point I always say, if I knew what
why
it
are
would
you
be-
guys exploring Mars? What are you going to find there? We don't know. That's why we're going.
Yeah, that's
Crying out loud.
great. And as an
Wait.
Okay,
That's
you
not
go
fair.
on. It's
No,
not-
wait. No, there are two kinds of exploration. One of them is I have no idea what I'm looking for, but maybe I'll find it when I see it.
Okay,
Another
tell me
kind of explanation.
You can't argue with him. I've learned it. It's really
Another
good.
kind of exploration is we think we know what's going on and we want to test our hypotheses. That's another kind of exploration. And one of them is there life somewhere else? We know there's life in at least one place in the universe, and that's called Earth. So what I want to do is go to the frozen surface of Jupiter's moon Europa, cut a hole, go ice fishing down there, put a submersible, see if something swims up to the camera and licks the lens. That's what I want to look for. Look for life.
With you.
Life.
But Neil, you were looking for something. When was the last time you just went, I hope to discover something? No, you're always looking for something.
No, but whenever we look
not
for
bad.
something, we are often surprised. And I think that the point is that if we really could anticipate the progress of science, it almost, in some sense, wouldn't be worth doing, because it means we'd already kind of know where we're going and what the answers are. And I think so when people ask me, what's the next great thing? I say, if I knew, I'd be doing it right now. And so I think there is this sense we are driven by questions, interesting questions, but often those questions lead us to answers that lead to more interesting questions that are totally different than the ones we came
I
up
say
with.
not just often, but most times. I
Yeah,
agree.
so I think that...
But you can say something about the question which you really would wish to know the answer to. And I mean, for me, it would be what's consciousness? Because that's totally baffling.
Richard, you know what I think?
I agree.
Not that you asked, but what I think on this is consciousness has kind of baffled us for a while, okay? And evidence that we haven't a clue about what consciousness is drawn from the fact of how many books are published on the topic, right? We're not really continuing to publish books, not really, on like Newtonian physics. It's done, all right? So the fact that people keep publishing books on consciousness is the evidence we don't know anything about it, because if we knew all about it, you wouldn't have to keep publishing. So what I wonder, Richard, is whether there really is no such thing as consciousness at all, and that there's some other understanding of the functioning of the human brain that renders that question obsolete.
To that, I've got to say, like, oh, wow.
Perfect. Okay.
And am I like thinking, or am I just like thinking that I'm thinking? Wow.
Will you stop with that?
Richard, we went decades not understanding the precession of Mercury. It was this big mystery, and we invented solutions to it, like a mysterious planet Vulcan tugging on it such that it's perihelion precessed. And that wasn't the explanation at all. It was obviously general relativity, another thing, not the original question we were asking. So you say you want to know what consciousness is. Maybe that's not even the right question.
How about this? What's the nature of consciousness?
Excellent. Okay, let's move on. Actually, Tracy, I think I want to direct this one to you.
Who's you?
To Tracy. That's not Neil.
I'll be happy.
Okay.
Get back.
Okay, it says here, science has recently become somewhat trendy, popping up in the show The Big Bang Theory or in I Beep Loving Science on Facebook.
She's here. She's here.
I know she's here. Okay. Often the focus is not actually on the science, but making entertainment out of science. Is this ultimately good for science, do you think? So I think you have a perspective on that.
Yeah, I do. I don't think when it's done well, it's diminishing the science or the scientists for that matter. I think that what is really spectacular is when you can take high-level science and apply storytelling and all kinds of things that we know help people learn about a subject. I mean, we learned in, again, broadcast news. I was with ABC News for many years, and if anyone said, well, we must do that story because it's very, very important, we knew that was just death because, you know, eat your peas journalism or eat your peas writing, you know, you must know this because it's important, is just, it's never going to light a fire in people's imaginations, children or adults. So I don't think it's turning, you know, entertainment is not a bad word, as long as you continue to preserve and communicate the real stuff, the real science. And that's the philosophy we apply to this. We didn't want to do, nod to science and then go off and tap dance. I mean, it was really engaging with the material, but recognizing that sometimes this stuff is really hard. And you need to write it well, act it well, and
produce it well. And I have to say, you do a great job of producing. I think you really do.
I only wanted to answer that question. All you have to look at is what is going on this stage tonight. This is entertainment.
I hope so.
This is absolute entertainment. I'm sitting here just watching. I'm ducking out of the way sometimes, but I'm sitting here watching, and it's making a point about science and how to convey and how to make science interesting to the public. You're getting into these.
I agree.
This is how to do it.
I think fun and entertainment are overrated.
That's because you're British. That's because you're British.
No.
It's okay.
People are more alike than they are different.
Science is hard, but it's worth it. It's fascinating, it's enthralling. But if we only talk about the bits that are fun and make bangs and smells and things, then we don't do science justice. I was once, we use the phrase dumbing down, and we mustn't do that. I once gave a speech at a British conference about the public communication of science, and I was ranting against dumbing down. And at the end, some man got up and said, "This is not an exaggeration, this is a true story." He said, "Maybe we need dumbing down in order to bring women and minorities into science."
We're gonna get there because there are a few questions about that. In fact,
That's why we fought a war to get out of England and start a new country.
I have to say, he was booed in the original.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, good, absolutely. And we actually, speaking of that, we are going to have Larry Summers here at one of our events next year, so you can ask him about that if any of you know about that. But anyway, the question is, the next question is, many of you are involved or aligned with the skepticism movement. How do you keep an open mind scientifically without using skepticism as an excuse for inaction? Can a person be a proactive skeptic? And I think that's an interesting question.
Are you kidding?
I knew you thought.
I think, Lawrence, correct me, but people confuse, in the modern word that's been made up, is conflate the word cynicism with the word skepticism. And they're two different words.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know not a lot of young people, but one is you're not going to pay any attention to anything. You just think everything's screwed up and nothing's ever going to work out right. That's cynicism. But skepticism is you're presented with evidence and you do your best to draw conclusions based on that. So, as the saying goes, I am Bill Nye, do you believe in ghosts? No. However, I'd love to see one. And bring it on. So I am open-minded to the idea, but the more I look into it in a skeptical frame of way of thinking, the less likely it seems. But bring it on. When I was young, the universe was slowing down. Well, it turns out that's not, right? Mm-hmm. Do I run in circles screaming? Or do I go, that's cool? But I do want to know why. Yeah.
And well, you know, and I think that's the point. Is being wrong is really the most exciting thing in science. And in fact, as I often say, you know, when I debate people, speaking of skepticism, there are people who don't accept the fact that evolution is a fact. And I've spent an undue amount of time in this country talking to those people. Well, talking to school boards and others in government, trying to get.
Which I want to applaud.
But anyway, but there's this illusion that we somehow have this pact that we shake hands when we get our PhD. Evolution, can't question it, and we want to be right. And the people don't understand that the way to become successful is to prove your colleagues wrong. That's the way to become a well-known scientist, is to make a discovery that proves they're wrong. So if there was something better than evolution, if it didn't work, Richard would be the first person to want to try and discover it in a sense, because it would mean we'd learn something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we can add something to that, which is that there's an attitude in the culture that says that everybody's entitled to their opinion, and you've got to respect their opinion. No, you damn well haven't got to respect their opinion.
That's a great segue because there's an opinion of Neil's that I don't like, and
Really? Boy, knocked me over with a feather.
actually he's going to say it's not an opinion, but let me ask this. Jump to this question.
Bring
then.
it on.
Yeah, I figured. Okay. Do you think the privatization of space travel is a hindrance to the long-term goal of deep space exploration?
It should have happened decades ago.
And it.
Now.
And okay. And actually, I agree with you in that sense because, well, I'm not sure decades ago. I think the government had to be involved to learn how to get things going. I don't think
decades ago we knew how to go in and out of low Earth orbit since 1962.
That's right.
So that's decades ago.
That's right, and that's not deep. But that's not deep space exploration. But I think you're absolutely right. The private industry is a perfect place to do low Earth orbit because, and not NASA, because it's boring and dull, and it's.
No, you can generalize it. It's not simply that private enterprise is for low Earth orbit. Private enterprise is for anything where the risks have been pre-assessed by the government investment in the frontier, which is I think where NASA should live, on the frontier, on the moving frontier, and as that frontier moves, it leaves behind routine. It leaves behind certain needs of the activity, and those needs would then be a void filled by private enterprise, who would surely do it more efficiently than any government enterprise can. But the frontier, where it's dangerous, it's expensive, and all the risks are unquantified, you combine these three, you cannot establish a capital market valuation of that frontier, and so therefore government has to take the first step if you're going to do this at all. And that's why the post office doesn't have their own postal planes. You rent space in the belly of Delta Airlines because they can do it more efficiently.
Yeah, no,
Well,
absolutely.
that's true of all science. Medicine is the same way. Business is not going to step in and do fundamental research. NIH is going to do it, and they're going to take that risk. And you can apply it any big risk.
And in fact, it's really important. Right now, people are saying, well, you got to fund science that has immediate application. But in fact, the government is there to fund the research that no private industry is ever going to fund because the benefits are a generation away. But in fact, 50% of our gross national product comes from fundamental curiosity-based research a generation ago. And the only way to do that is with the government.
Correct.
Now, we're all agreed with that, but the thing where we may disagree, and I'd be interested to see, because actually it'd be interesting because you're the Planetary Society, and I wonder whether Brian agrees with me on this, because I think many scientists like me would say the frontier doesn't involve people. The frontier that NASA is doing in space, the real science that NASA doesn't involve 100-pound bags of water.
I didn't say science. I talked about
No, I want
exploration.
to, okay.
There's a distinction here. If you only want to do science in space, yeah, you would never send humans.
You
would
agree.
send robots. Even the geologist who would love to go to Mars with a hammer would just love it. If you gave the geologist the option, I can send you to one spot, or I can send 100
Spacecraft.
100
Robots.
rovers to 100 different spots that you can pick. They're picking the 100 rovers.
No, actually, that's not true. I'm in the Department of Geology, among other things, and many of my colleagues there disagree and say they think a geologist could do in a little while what rovers could do. I happen to disagree. I think
No. Did you tell them 100 rovers
Yeah, I
in
did.
100 different spots?
I did. You know what? I told them.
Okay.
I told them the real number, which is probably 1,000 different rovers, because you
Okay.
can send. Let me finish for a second, Neil. You can send, as I often say, you can send a rover to Mars for the price that it takes to make a movie about sending Bruce Willis to Mars. And,
That's right.
Well, this is
But
our fight.
if you told the geologists it was a one-way trip,
which is what I've argued
would they
for.
still want to be going?
They still want to go.
Yeah, then they're just crazy. I mean, just
No,
why
they
are you
are.
even talking to those
No,
geologists?
so you guys, just if I may speak briefly about the Planetary Society, we are fighting the good fight to restore funding for planetary exploration. We're trying to get $1.5 billion a year, so we need $300 million for planetary science, and it's being threatened. So fiscal year 14 is coming up for NASA. If you got nothing else to do, please check out planetary.org and consider supporting this, because our claim is science is what NASA does best, and planetary science is the best of that. And so we really would like you all to consider supporting it. It is such a good value. It's such an amazing value, so consider. And by the way, it's been estimated that what the rover does, built by our very best rover engineers, driven by our very best rover scientists, rover drivers, who are influenced by our very best scientists, what that does in a week, a human geologist can do in about a minute.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I agree,
So-
but the
no,
human
so
geologist,
there's the cost.
it's not going to run to 100 different places on the planet.
in fact, actually, the human geologist, I think, most often is not going to make it alive to the planet.
Well, I mean, so on and so on. But
Yeah.
this is where you see it's instead of 10,000 to 1, it's got to be like 1 billion to 1. So we'll get there. The longest journey starts with but a single step.
No, but the other thing I want to, let's stay on this topic for a little longer, because
sorry.
I maintain the reason people are interested in humans traveling in space is because they can die. That's what makes it interesting, and you want to see if they're going to die. But
NASCAR.
what?
I thought that was NASCAR that you're talking about.
But I find. But let me
Lawrence.
ask you a question. I find it.
Lawrence.
Okay, I'll ask you this question. When I see a picture from the rover, I'm more excited about it coming from the rover than if it came from an astronaut taking the picture, because the astronaut's using a camera, but the rover is it's part of the rover.
Let me tell you why that's probably not true, even though you
Okay.
think it is.
Okay.
Okay. Most people don't know that there were robots as well as rovers on the moon while we were first going to the moon. But you didn't know anything about those because the media focused on the astronauts. And it's the astronauts through which we gain vicarious access to space, because they have mouths, they have brains, they have a childhood memory, they have school teachers that can talk about those astronauts. And I've yet to see a ticker tape parade for a robot. So I submit to you that if at the same time the Curiosity rover landed, if at that same time a human astronaut landed on Mars, you would have known nothing about the Curiosity rover.
Yeah, but-
it would have been relegated to page 30, and the front page headlines would have been humans put footprints on Mars. And it's that force which will bring less science than the robot that has a power of influence on our culture. that inspires an entire generation to want to do the same thing. My generation, when you ask my fellow scientists, should we send humans into space? No, that's too expensive, send robots. Yet I said, well, how did you get interested in space? Oh, because of the Apollo program. And I slap them. I'm saying, what are you...
No, that's it. No, there would
On the other hand, if you remember, if Apollo 13 hadn't been the dramatic failure it was, they would have canceled the rest of the Apollo. They canceled 3 of the last
Couldn't
missions.
end on that
There
note.
were three Saturn V rockets lying on the ground around space, around the country, because it was so interesting that they abolished the last 3.
No, that's delusional, and I'll tell you why.
It's not incorrect.
That's the facts.
No.
You can argue with the facts.
Watch me.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry. Everybody mentioned their book. It's time for me to mention my latest book. It's
I
called
don't think anyone mentioned their book, actually.
My most recent book is titled Space Chronicles, but that wasn't the original title. The original title was Failure to Launch:
But
The
editor
Dreams
wouldn't
and
go-
Delusions of Space Enthusiasts. And the publisher says, that's too depressing. You can't have the word failure in your title. But that's what it's about. What you just said is a complete delusion. It presumes that we went to the moon for science. It presumes that we went to the moon to explore it. But that's not why we went to the moon. We went to the
Brother
moon.
Neil, no, it is not. No, it is not.
We went to the moon because we were at war. Sputnik was not just some orbiting spacecraft. It was a hollowed out intercontinental ballistic missile where they took out the warhead and put in a radio transmitter. The military knew this. That's what founded NASA. NASA's budget for science it averaged over all these years about 25%. The rest has been for geopolitical purposes. All right? So it's the I don't want to die driver in this world. That's why we spent all this money. And so the moment we learn Russia's not going to the moon and it's certainly not going to Mars, we canceled the program. It had nothing to do with public interest.
Okay, now let me. It is a. Let me try.
I got to pull back.
Yeah, you got to come in. But it is. Let me try and bridge that gap a little bit.
I'm going to be silent.
No, you're not. I think it's really important to point out that this is a political issue. And in fact, me and Buzz Aldrin together testified before the House Science Committee on Space Exploration. And when I said that humans don't do science in space, I didn't argue, in fact, even before the committee, that we shouldn't send humans into space. We should just say honestly why we're doing it. We're doing it for adventure. That's why we're doing it.
No, that's not what funded it.
Hold on.
No, that's not true.
See, you said you wouldn't talk.
I did say.
Okay.
You can say that.
No,
but
hold on.
There's no there. Okay? No. Just look at the history of everybody doing big projects, and it's never driven by exploration. It's never driven by science. It's never driven by curiosity. Not if it's big and expensive. It's driven by the fact that people don't want to die. So there's a war driver. It's also driven by the fact that people want to get wealthy. So there's a
hold on.
money
We have the
driver.
Large
The Large Hadron Collider.
The Large Hadron
The Large
Collider.
Do you know?
Oh, no.
Just proves my point.
The Large Hadron Collider. Please remind me of the total construction cost of the Large Hadron Collider.
I don't know, about 10 billion.
About 10 billion. That is 6 months of NASA funding. So you call that big budget? Not here in America, it's not.
Yeah, NASA's budget's about 17 billion. Doesn't go as far as it used to.
So it's expensive, but not on the scale that we're talking about here. That's all the countries share. That's not big money.
Okay.
Big money is a shuttle mission costs $1 billion here. I'm not saying it should cost that, but that's what it does. And who writes those checks? It's people who do it for geopolitical reasons. not because they care about science. Our super collider, the one that you would have benefited from, the superconducting super collider, started to get funding in the 1980s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
200-mile ring, it would have been...
No,
it would-
60-mile ring.
60-mile diameter, the circumference. It's
60 miles around, yeah.
I thought it was 60 times
Well, take
pi.
it from me, it's 60.
Pi?
No, it's 60.
Okay.
Better
Circumference
story
is
with
60 miles?
200, though.
Brian?
60.
60.
Circumference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been saying it wrong all these years.
Well, like
Never
a lot of
mind.
things.
Thank you.
Never mind.
Okay, no. So watch. So here's a super collider. America would have found the Higgs boson decades ago, all right? So what happens? The budget gets cut for reasons, the cost overruns are there. Excuse me, okay?
Yeah.
It got cut in the early 90s. What happened in 1989? Peace broke out in Europe. All of a sudden, the physicist, who was the hero of the 20th century for making the bomb, is no longer viewed as necessary to national security. And so the project gets cut like that.
Actually, you got it wrong. The project got cut actually for even sillier political reasons, which was the Texas congressional delegation voted the wrong way. And
If we were still at war, that would have never come up.
It's also the International Space Station, right? I mean,
Yes, that's true. That's the top story. The bottom story is we don't longer think
Look,
we're going to die.
So let's leave this topic, but science and politics are, alas, inextricably mixed. And I think...
And politics wins every time.
I think what I would say is that it's vitally important for the public to understand what their issues really are, so they won't be lied to by the politicians effectively, and they can elect people to base policy on empirical evidence and not on ideology or anything else.
Story. Humans tell stories.
Now, there are two more. We'll go a few minutes late because there are two more questions I want to get to. And the last one, perhaps the most important. But Neil, there were a bunch of questions that had to do with science fiction. But please discuss speculative fiction and its role in expanding interest in or knowledge of science in general. Let me just ask a question: how many scientists here read science fiction when they were growing up? You didn't? A little bit. Put your hand up. Make it sound good. Okay, good. There we go. Anyway, Neil, what do you think? What do you think that relationship is?
Well, the kind of science fiction that was coterminous with the Apollo program and the stuff that got us all excited about going to the moon and I think helped create the political support for the kind of big NASA that we've been talking about, hasn't been written in a while. Science fiction kind of took a different turn, and I'm sort of exhibit A of this. So for the last few decades, a lot of science fiction has tended to be darker, more introspective, more about sort of the hero being the kind of hacker who's trying to figure out how to exploit a system that somebody else built, as opposed to the engineer or the scientist discovering or building something new. And I don't know whether there's a cause and effect relationship, but that has coincided with what looks to me like a big drop-off in the rate at which we've made big advances in new ways of getting around, new sort of major infrastructure, space exploration, et cetera. So I'm trying to pay my debt to society right now by working on a project here at Arizona State, writing some science fiction in a more techno-optimistic vein. It came out of a sort of public argument that I had with Michael Crow a couple years ago, where we were trying to figure out whether science fiction writers could take any share of the blame for this. And so
So you're the one.
yeah. I'm the one. So we're trying this experiment. I'm writing a story about a tower 20 kilometers high for launching rockets off of. And I'm working with people here at ASU on trying to write that story in a kind of technically responsible way. So it's not just pure speculation, and we hope to have other people involved in the project as well.
20 kilometers high?
Yeah.
We could turn that into a sundial.
Oh, the
But
engineers.
here's the thing.
engineers.
Well, here's the thing. For me, I'm of a certain age. For me, it was Star Trek.
Yeah.
And the thing about Star Trek,
I can't argue with that.
well, I mean, there's technology. Everybody speaks the same language generally, and they beam up and down, which is a huge shortcut. But it was this intensely optimistic view of the
Exactly.
And so what I'd like you to do, science fiction guy of now, of the future, is I tell you guys, if you want to worry about things, we are living at a great time. I mean, we've got this worldwide economic crisis, we got human immunodeficiency virus, we've got all kinds of diseases that are resistant to our things. We have what used to be 1.5 billion people, now it's going to be 12 or 15 billion people. And really, everybody here, climate change is the thing. But what if we had an optimistic view of the future where we come up with new technologies, new social structures, where people get along and address climate change and improve the quality of life for everybody? I would love to have that.
Yeah.
Well, just before, as a tribute to my mother, the key to this, the start of this, is to educate women. And this is half of the humans are women or female, because there's some people that are younger. Half of the humans are female, so half the scientists should be female, and that would be empowering. And I think gives us the possibility, if you have now suddenly, not suddenly, or in a few decades, have twice as many brains on the problem, we could, dare I say it, change the world.
I just wanted to say that I've actually learned a lot of science from reading science fiction. I think I first came to understand information theory through reading science fiction. The point about scientific discoveries being made independently in different places at the same time, as though there's sort of something in the air. The idea that there are deep problems which we may be ill-equipped to solve, but which are maybe that the scientists of 500 years hence will solve. The idea that it's arbitrary what form information comes into the brain, whether it comes in through the eyes or the ears, it's still it's always neurons that finally do it, and so there's a kind of arbitrariness about the nature of the scientific medium. All these things, which I regard as part of my scientific equipment, I got from reading science fiction.
And I think that optimism you talk about is really important. I think it really was one of the things that kept Star Trek going, for example. The idea that science, too often it seems to me in Met science fiction, there's a dystopic view of the future, that science makes the world a worse place. But science has made the world a much better place. People live much happier lives, healthier lives on the whole, and much longer because of science. And so that optimistic view is, I think, incredibly important to push, which is how I'm going to almost end this now, because I think we've gone over time. There is one thing that you pointed out, and there were some questions about this, and I think I want to address it directly, which is the fact that there weren't more women on this panel. I was at the Nobel Prize ceremonies a few years ago, and they addressed the fact that there were more women Nobel laureates. And what they said was, it's a fact that because of societal issues, that women weren't encouraged to go into science. And the Nobel Prizes are given most often for things that have done 20 years earlier or 50 years earlier. And in 50 years from now, half the Nobel Prizes will be for women because there are women in science. And I'm hoping that events like this, we are the old guard for the most of us. Even you. And I'm hoping and that we will encourage young women to go into science and go into communicating about science, and so that when we have this panel in the future, we'll have an all-female panel. But thank you very much tonight for coming.
Why don't you stand up and take a bow?
Let's do a bow. Let's do a real bow. No. We gotta do a bow. Come on. Let's hold hands.
We're going to do that.
Fourth wall.
Drive home safely.
The sun and you and me, all the stars that you can see, are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day. In an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour of the galaxy we call the Milky Way.